On a biting winter night in the small town of Riverbrook, the snow fell like quiet judgment, blanketing the streets in pristine white. Jack Harrison moved with a soldier's steadiness, his worn military jacket hanging heavy on broad shoulders, the faded American flag patch a silent testament to battles fought far from this cold place. Inside the Red Rail Diner, the warm glow of lamps spilled onto the frosted windows, promising refuge from the unforgiving wind outside. Jack's breath fogged the air as he stepped through the door, a mix of hunger and hope tightening in his chest. But the moment he entered, the diner's usual hum faltered. Conversations paused, forks hovered midair, eyes flickered nervously toward him, then quickly away. A young mother instinctively pulled her child closer. An elderly man tucked his wallet beneath the table. Jack's years on the streets had trained him well to read such fear. But tonight, despite the cold stare of suspicion, he remained composed, sliding onto a stool at the counter with a practiced calm. "Just passing through," he murmured, voice steady yet carrying the weight of untold stories. "Just looking for a hot meal." Emily Parker, the diner's waitress, had seen hardship up close. At 23, juggling dreams of college and supporting her brother through the police academy, she recognized the worn resilience in Jack's eyes, a sharpness beneath the rough exterior that set him apart from the others. As she poured his coffee, the quiet tension snapped. Officers Smith and Johnson, lurking like vultures in the corner booth, launched their verbal assault, mocking Jack's presence with cruel jabs and cold laughter that rippled through the room. "Dumpster diving doesn't count as dining out, huh?" one sneered. The other taunted, tossing a packet of sugar onto Jack's plate as if it were a challenge. The diner's warmth suddenly felt like a cage, thick with hostility and fear. Jack's fingers closed gently around the sugar packet, and with a deliberate grace born from years of discipline, he lifted it and placed it back on the officer's table. "I earned my dignity in Kandahar," he said quietly, eyes steady, "and I don't need to earn it again from you." The room held its breath as the officers rose, the first move in a battle that would shake the town to its core. Emily Parker's hands trembled as she stood outside the Red Rail Diner, clutching her phone like a lifeline against the biting cold. The image of Jack Harrison, strong, silent, yet bruised and powerless, played over in her mind, mingling with the harsh laughter and taunts from officers Smith and Johnson. Her heart pounded with a fierce urgency she couldn't ignore. With a breath that steadied her nerves, she dialed the Pentagon, her fingers pressing each number with a determined precision that surprised even herself. The line clicked, and a calm, professional voice greeted her. "Department of Defense, how may I direct your call?" Emily swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "I need to speak with General David Mitchell. It's urgent. It's about Jack Harrison. He's in trouble." The silence that followed was thick, stretching longer than she dared hope. Then came a shift. Clicks, transfers, and finally a voice that cut through the static with an undeniable authority. "This is Colonel Reynolds, aide to General Mitchell. Who am I speaking with?" "Emily Parker," she said, her voice firm despite the whirlwind inside her. "I'm calling from Riverbrook. Two police officers just arrested Jack Harrison, and I'm afraid for his safety." The line went quiet once more before Colonel Reynolds asked her to hold. Every second stretched like an eternity as Emily leaned against the cold brick wall, eyes darting nervously to the empty street. Then the moment came. A deep, commanding voice filled the receiver. General David Mitchell himself. "Tell me everything." Back in Washington, the retired general sat in his austere office, the weight of years etched into his silver hair and steely blue eyes. As Emily relayed the story, the harassment, the arrest, the dog tags kicked aside, something inside Mitchell snapped awake. Memories flooded back, dust-choked streets of Kandahar, the firefight that changed everything, and the man who'd refused to leave him behind. "Emily," he said, voice resolute, "you did exactly the right thing. Send me that recording immediately. I want DOD Internal Affairs on Riverbrook's doorstep within the hour. And you, stay safe. Do not speak of this to anyone else." Relief mingled with fear as Emily nodded, clutching the phone like a shield. Somewhere, far away, a chain of power had been set in motion, and the quiet town of Riverbrook was about to feel the tremors. Jack Harrison sat quietly in the cold, unforgiving cell of the Riverbrook Police Department, his eyes closed as he focused on steadying his breath. The concrete bench beneath him was hard and biting against his skin, but his mind was somewhere far away, walking the narrow, dust-choked alleys of Kandahar, every step calculated, every sound analyzed. Years of combat had drilled into him the art of control, and now, in this sterile cage, meditation was his shield against the rising tide of anger and despair. The clang of the cell door snapping open pulled him back to the harsh reality. Two figures appeared in the doorway, sharp suits and badges gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Special Agents Ava Reynolds and Morales from the Department of Defense's Internal Affairs. "Mr. Harrison," Ava's voice was calm but commanding. "You're free to go." Jack slowly rose, muscles tight but composed, his gaze steady. "That was quicker than I expected," he remarked with a faint, knowing smile. Morales nodded. "General Mitchell pulled some strings. You're being released and all charges dropped." As they led him through the station, Jack passed Officers Smith and Johnson locked in a tense exchange with the sheriff, faces pale, eyes dark with unease. Ava's tone hardened. "The Department of Defense will conduct a full review of your arrest. Both officers are placed on administrative leave pending investigation." The weight of justice hung heavily in the air as Jack walked past, his voice low but resolute. Truth doesn't need force to stand. Outside, the biting cold wrapped around him like a familiar cloak. The agents offered him a ride, but Jack declined, choosing instead to reclaim his dignity one measured step at a time through the silent, snow-covered streets. Each footfall echoed resilience, a quiet promise that he would not be broken. Ava Reynolds sat hunched over a cluttered table in a dimly lit motel room, surrounded by stacks of files, flickering laptop screens, and scattered coffee cups. The air was thick with the weight of truth waiting to be uncovered. What she was digging into went far beyond Jack Harrison's arrest. It was the unraveling of a sinister web woven deep within Riverbrook's police department. The Shield Man, a covert network of officers operating beyond the law, had been systematically targeting the town's most vulnerable: homeless veterans, activists, anyone deemed inconvenient. Ava's fingers trembled as she scrolled through encrypted emails and intercepted communications linking Officers Smith and Johnson to a shadowy corporate entity called Falcon Corp. Officially, Falcon Corp was a security contractor providing equipment and consulting services. Unofficially, they funneled illicit payments to Shieldman members, buying up properties through shell companies in Riverbrook's poorest neighborhoods, forcing out those who called the streets home. The patterns were chilling. Harassing arrests, disappearances, brutal beatings disguised as law enforcement, all designed to clear the way for gentrification and profit. Ava's voice was steady, but edged with disbelief, as she shared her findings with Jack and Emily, who listened with growing horror. "This isn't just corruption," she said. "It's a coordinated campaign to erase entire communities." Outside, the winter wind howled through Riverbrook's cracked sidewalks, but inside, a storm of resistance was gathering. Jack's eyes hardened, the weight of betrayal fueling a fire that had never truly died within him. This was no longer just about survival. It was about justice. As Ava continued her relentless search for evidence, whispers of fear spread through the town's underground networks. The Shield Men operated with impunity, but now their secrets were unraveling. And with every file Ava uncovered, every testimony she collected, the foundation of their power grew shakier. Riverbrook's darkest shadows were being pulled into the light, and the battle for the town's soul had only just begun. Quincy Q. Davis wheeled into the cramped motel room with the effortless energy of a man who had seen too much, yet refused to be beaten. His sharp eyes scanned the sea of tangled wires, laptops, and monitors humming softly in the dim light. Behind him trailed his hand-picked team: Marcus Ghost Lee, the digital forensics wizard with a knack for uncovering secrets buried deep in code; Brianna Trace Collins, the ex-military counterintelligence expert whose calm precision masked a fierce determination; and Jordan Peterson, the cybersecurity genius who had once guarded America's most sensitive data. Together, they transformed the modest motel room into a high-tech command center, a fortress of digital resistance. Screens flickered to life, displaying police radio chatter, traffic camera feeds, and encrypted communications intercepted in real time. Q's fingers danced across a keyboard, establishing secure, untraceable communication lines that pulsed with silent urgency. "We fix what others can't," Q said with a half smile, the familiar slogan of their nonprofit support network for forgotten veterans echoing in the room. As Ava Reynolds and Emily Parker watched, awestruck yet hopeful, the team mapped connections, officers, transactions, shell companies, all intertwining into the sinister Shieldman web. Trace pulled up a detailed network graph showing who answered to whom, while Ghost unearthed financial trails tying Falcon Corps' shadowy deals directly to the pockets of Riverbrook's corrupt cops. Jordan's voice broke the hum of activity. They're laundering money through real estate, flipping properties in gentrified neighborhoods where the homeless once lived. They're cleansing the city block by block. Ava's jaw tightened, eyes blazing with resolve. This wasn't just a local fight anymore. It was a battle against a sprawling machine of greed and injustice. Q nodded. We're not just collecting data, we're building an unbreakable case. Outside, the snow continued to fall silently, but inside this room, the gears of revolution clicked into place. The fight to reclaim Riverbrook streets, to restore dignity to its forgotten, had found its arsenal. Not just courage and truth, but the unstoppable power of technology wielded by those who refused to give up. James Parker's footsteps echoed softly down the sterile hallways of the Riverbrook Police Academy, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Clad in his crisp cadet uniform, he was no longer just Emily Parker's younger brother. He was a witness trapped between loyalty to his family and the harsh truth unfolding before him. From the moment he joined the academy, James had glimpsed the darker underbelly of the force, whispered training. Sessions led by Captain Robert Mason, lessons in bending the rules, fabricating reports, and targeting the vulnerable under the guise of maintaining order. Tonight, armed with a hidden wire recorder, he risked everything to expose the Shieldmen's insidious grip on Riverbrook's law enforcement. In a dimly lit room, Officers Smith and Johnson boasted openly, their voices dripping with contempt as they bragged about taking out trash and collecting bonuses for each vagrant removed. Captain Mason sat nearby, chillingly casual, detailing the covert alliance with Falcon Corps, a corporate behemoth funding their operation to gentrify neighborhoods by force and fear. Every homeless person we move puts money in the city's pocket, Mason sneered, his eyes cold and calculating. It's a win-win. James's grip tightened on the recorder, swallowing the bile rising in his throat. The weight of betrayal pressed down, but his resolve only strengthened. Back in the shadows, Emily Parker wrestled with her own battle, the fallout from her courageous act of recording Jack Harrison's harassment. Fired from the Red Rail Diner and branded a traitor on social media, she endured threats and intimidation. Yet her spirit remained unbroken. When James reached out, his voice trembling with urgency and fear, they found in each other a lifeline. His insider knowledge was the missing piece of their fight, a key to unraveling a corrupt system cloaked in badges and lies. Together, they became a force greater than the sum of their parts, ready to shine a merciless light into Riverbrook's darkest corners. The fight was no longer distant. It was in their blood, their family, and their future. The moment Emily Parker uploaded the first video exposing the brutal treatment of Jack Harrison and the Shieldmen's shadowy network, the digital world exploded. Overnight, her raw footage, juxtaposing Jack's honorable service with the cold cruelty of Officers Smith and Johnson, racked up over 1 million views, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Comments flooded in from every corner of the nation. Outrage, solidarity, and an urgent call for justice. Local news stations scrambled to cover the story, while national veterans organizations rallied behind Jack, lending their powerful voices to the growing chorus demanding change. The hashtag Justice for Jack surged upward, becoming a beacon for those who had long suffered in silence. Inside the makeshift command center, Ava Reynolds watched the numbers climb, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and steely determination. People are finally listening, Emily breathed, scrolling through messages of support and offers to testify from other victims. This wasn't just about a single man or a single town anymore. It was a movement. Pressure mounted on Riverbrook's officials. Whispers turned to confrontations, and the walls shielding the Shieldmen began to crumble under the relentless glare of public scrutiny. Meanwhile, Captain Robert Mason staged a desperate press conference, spewing defiant denials and casting Jack as a dangerous troublemaker, but his words fell on deaf ears. The court of public opinion had already decided. Ordinary citizens, once fearful to speak, found courage in the growing wave of exposure. Veterans, families, and activists organized rallies demanding accountability. The town that had tried to bury its shame now stood at the epicenter of a national reckoning. In living rooms, cafes, and offices, the conversation shifted. How many more Jack Harrisons were out there, suffering under the weight of silence and corruption? With each shared story and every viral post, the Shieldmen's grip weakened. The fight for dignity had been reignited by a single act of bravery, and now it was unstoppable. The night air was thick with tension as Jack Harrison led a small team of veterans through the shadowed streets toward the dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of Riverbrook. Every step was measured, every breath steady. Years of combat honed their senses to perfection. Inside the cold, barren building, Emily Parker sat bound to a chair, a fresh bruise blooming on her cheek, eyes wide but unbroken. Nearby, Officer Smith lounged casually, a sinister smirk playing on his lips as he watched for Captain Mason's arrival. The seconds stretched taut as Jack signaled his team into position, silent hand gestures cutting through the darkness. Two veterans created a calculated diversion at the front entrance, drawing attention and forcing guards to scramble. Meanwhile, Jack and his closest allies slipped toward the back, the lock on Emily's prison quickly defeated by practiced hands. With a swift, precise strike, Jack incapacitated Smith, his movements fluid and unerring, born from countless firefights. "You all right?" Jack whispered, untying the knots binding Emily. Her voice trembled with adrenaline but held steady. "I'm okay. They didn't know I kept recording." She pulled a small device from her shoe, a faint smile breaking through the fear. As they melted into the night, shadows swallowed their retreat. The warehouse erupted with shouts as reinforcements arrived, but by then, the veterans were ghosts, vanished into the cold embrace of Riverbrook's streets. Back at the motel, Ava Reynolds and Quincy Q. Davis poured over the damning audio Emily had captured, officers boasting openly about cleaning out trash and the lucrative ties to Falcon Corps. The casual cruelty in their voices ignited a fire within the team. "This is our moment," Ava said, her voice low but fierce. The evidence was undeniable, the web of corruption exposed. But with every victory, the danger escalated. The Shieldmen fought back with intimidation, threats, and violence. Jack's world had become a battleground once more. Yet armed with truth, unity, and unyielding resolve, the veterans and their allies stood ready to face the storm, determined to bring justice to a town built on lies. The courtroom buzzed with an electric mix of anticipation and tension as Ava Reynolds stepped forward to present the culmination of months of tireless investigation. Rows of reporters, advocates, and curious citizens filled the packed hall, their eyes fixed on the sprawling evidence laid bare before them. Ava's voice cut through the charged silence with unwavering conviction, unraveling the Shieldmen's tangled web of lies, corruption, and calculated cruelty. She detailed how this shadow network within multiple police departments systematically targeted homeless veterans and marginalized communities, all to grease the wheels of Falcon Corps' lucrative gentrification schemes. Screens behind her flickered alive, displaying damning emails, financial ledgers, and unedited video footage, officers bragging about planting evidence, orchestrating arrests, and silencing dissent with brutal efficiency. Each revelation was a hammer striking at the fortress of corruption, shaking its foundations with relentless force. In the front row, Jack Harrison sat with a steady gaze, the weight of the past mingling with a fierce hope for justice. Emily Parker and James Parker flanked him, their presence a testament to the courage that had fueled this fight from the very beginning. Outside, the city's atmosphere crackled as news broke. Senate committees called for hearings, civil rights groups rallied, and the public's demand for accountability roared louder than ever. Meanwhile, Captain Robert Mason's desperate attempts to discredit Jack and his allies crumbled under the relentless onslaught of evidence. His press conference was a hollow echo compared to the resounding impact of Ava's presentation. The judge, a seasoned arbiter of justice, absorbed every word with solemn gravity before issuing sweeping injunctions to dismantle the Shieldmen chapters and order a nationwide investigation into Falcon Corps. The courtroom erupted, the air thick with the promise of change. It was not just a victory for Riverbrook, but a beacon for communities nationwide, a clarion call that corruption, no matter how deep-rooted, could be uprooted by courage, truth, and unyielding resolve. The crisp autumn air was alive with celebration as the Turner Veterans Community Center opened its doors, transforming a once-forgotten factory into a vibrant sanctuary of hope and healing. A crowd gathered beneath the golden sunlight, families, veterans, activists, and townsfolk who had once turned a blind eye now stood shoulder to shoulder, united by the promise of change. Jack Harrison, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that spoke of newfound stability, moved through the crowd with quiet dignity. His eyes, once hardened by battles both foreign and domestic, softened as children laughed freely in the nearby garden and veterans shared stories in the warmth of the new gathering spaces. Nearby, General David Mitchell stood proudly, a special advisor to the President's Commission on Veteran Homelessness, his silver hair gleaming in the light. Ava Reynolds, ever the fierce advocate, watched the scene unfold with a sense of triumph tempered by the road still ahead. Emily Parker had blossomed from a hesitant waitress into a passionate documentarian, her lens capturing the faces and voices that had sparked a nationwide movement. The film chronicling their journey, the sacrifices, the battles, and the ultimate triumph had won acclaim and carried their story beyond Riverbrook's borders, inspiring others to stand up against injustice. Across town, the ripples of reform spread. Police departments restructured, laws enacted, and communities healed. Jack's modest home near the center was a quiet refuge, where each morning began with a ritual, placing dog tags of fallen comrades and victims lost to silence into a wooden box, honoring lives too long forgotten. One afternoon, as spring buds peeked through thawing earth, Jack added a new set of tags, those belonging to Officer Smith, reminding himself that even in darkness, redemption was possible. Standing at the podium of a local high school, Jack addressed a sea of young faces, urging them to recognize their own power and the worth of every person. "You don't need a uniform to be a hero," he said softly, "just the courage to speak your truth." As the sun set over Riverbrook, the streets that once echoed with fear now sang a song of resilience, justice, and the unbreakable human spirit. The battle was won, but the mission of dignity, of healing, of hope was only just beginning.